Dark academia. It is the breakout star trend of the season, and it leads to some absolutely beautiful names for a baby that are steeped in history. They're so evocative, they're full of storytelling. So listen along for some absolutely lush dark academia themed names. Academia could sound a little bit like it is mean-spirited or dark arts, but it's not really. As a philosophy graduate, it's all about the subculture that are really into literacy, poetry, think Dead Poets Society, think kind of secret societies and thought leaders. So I really think of this as like disruptive literature, disruptive art, back to ancient cultures and things that really shifted people's beliefs and feelings. And it's a really fascinating aesthetic and one that I love. And it's always my favourite thing to do is to take a trend and turn it into some beautiful names for children. So these names come from all over the world and all through history. So my first one is the name Casimir. I'm so into this name at the moment. It's actually a Slavic name and it means destroyer of peace. And what I love about this name is it's got that really ancient meaning and history behind it, Casimir, and it sounds like a dark academia hero. But I feel like with destroyer of peace, do you want your child to be a destroyer of peace? In a way you do, because I think it's that disruptor, it's that destroyer of the status quo, somebody who challenges things and changes things up. But the name is so gorgeous. It is so dark academia hero. There were only 3 baby boys named Casimir last year, and it's traditionally a name of a royal, so it's got that grandeur to it as well. What do you think of the name? Would you use it? Next name is the name Cardamom. Cardamom. I love it because it sounds like cardamom. So it's got that little bit of spice, but it's kind of gentle. And again, I feel like these names having strong sounds, like that strong k and d sound in it. Cardamom is lovely, and it actually means to be a sage, so to be somebody who's very wise and who can lead maybe a spiritual path as well. So it can mean sage, and it can also mean shadow. So it's almost somebody who I feel would live in the shadows but is guided with a lot of wise qualities, almost like Bruno from Encanto. That's such a mum reference. But I loved the name Cardamom. It is traditionally a male name, but I think it could work for either, and I think all names nowadays, these ones that are more unique, we can pretty much say are unisex names. Cardamom, I love the way it sounds, such a rare. Next name was chosen for 21 girls last year and 6 boys, and it's the name Rue. So Rue's interesting because it means regret. So it's a really interesting name for a baby. But it sounds sort of playful, like a little baby kangaroo, little Rue. Rue, but meaning to, you say somebody will rue the day. So it's interesting that it's getting used so much. It also can mean red if you spell it differently, sort of red-haired, and that sort of fiery personality that works really well for like a dark academia character. Again, sort of think of it as a character, but I love the fact that it also means road. And I think that when we're thinking about dark academia, for me, it's very much about these concepts and going down a road less travelled and having somebody who slightly thinks outside of where maybe other people think and take a different adventure in life or a different path. So that's why I think Rue works really well. I'm not sure that you want to say, yeah, I chose it because it's called regret. And this is the biggest regret of my life. I think that really the nicest way of thinking about it is this road less travelled, or you just want to go with regret. The next name is one of my favourite names at the moment, and it's the name Boaz. So you may have heard me talk about it before. It's a rare Hebrew name, and with all these names like Ezekiel and Ezra really coming up and Noah being so high in the charts now, I feel like Boaz is having its little moment lower down. There were 26 boys named Boaz, and it's a really interesting name. So sometimes it comes up as meaning magic, but it's much more complex than that. So Boaz was the name of a pillar in the Bible. There's lots written about these 2 pillars and what they stood for, because they weren't structural pillars, they were like architectural, which had really worked with dark academia. And some scholars would say that Boaz means strength or strength from within, because it's all about this pillar of strength, which I absolutely loved. I got a bit addicted to it. Some people say that the two pillars would have been around the tree of life in the Garden of Eden as well, in some writings about these pillars, and Boaz being one of them. And so it often can mean the pillar of creation and the pillar of the world. So it's just got so much history, so much thought about it, all to do with life and creation and strength and inner strength. And I just think the name sounds super duper cool as well. So I think it's perfect for a dark academia. I feel like we're all going to go creative writing after this. Write a story where the main character is called Boaz. It sort of leads you down a path, doesn't it? I also absolutely loved looking into ancient names. The name Cato. Absolutely love it, with the O at the end. Otto is so popular at the moment, but there were only 4 boys named Cato, and it's an ancient Roman name. Most of the names are ancient Greek, but this is ancient Roman, and it means all-knowing as well. So Cato, I think it's such a wearable name. And you might be saying it's also the antagonist in Hunger Games, which is such a dystopia. I love dystopian novels. I always have. I've always been a bit of a Dostoevsky, like Russian dystopian novels were my bag. I was such a one of those at uni. The next name was 14 boys and also 4 girls, and it's named Blaise. So it's bit different to Blaise, but Blaise Pascal was a philosopher, French philosopher. A lot of them were French, and Blaise was a famous philosopher of maths. God, I remember that at uni, philosophy of maths. Wasn't my favourite, but I love the name Blaise, and I actually love the name Pascal as well, which is linked to Easter, having an Easter baby, but a lovely, lovely philosopher name. Also Soren. Soren was the first name of Kierkegaard, who was the philosopher of existentialism. So anyone in existential angst, I think that really is what mainly is the basis of dark academia, isn't it? I love the name Soren. There were 37 boys named Soren last year, and it really worked as a modern name. I think it's getting more wearable. What do you think of the name Soren? Name Devin. I really love the name Devin. With the I ending, it actually means poet, and it sometimes comes through as meaning dark poetry, but I think any poetry, whether it's a dark poem or a lovely poem, poetry is all about speaking to our soul and telling truths. And so I think it's really, really great for dark academia name list, and it's a beautiful, beautiful name. It could look a bit like devil, I guess, I just thought of, but also with a V, I always think it seems quite pretty because it reminds me of the word love, Devin. So there were 20 boys and 3 girls named Devin last year, and I would get in there with it. I think it's one that's going to rise. So a couple of girl names. How about the name Skyler? This is my cat's name. It means scholar, so it means to learn and to study, which I really liked about it. She's called Skyler because the kids wanted to call her Sky because she's a Russian blue, and they were talking blue sky. And then I liked Skyler because my first cat was called Lola. Very boring story, but we do love her name Skyler. The name Skyler is actually getting more and more popular. So it's actually at number 159 for girls, which I was quite surprised about. I do know a few Skylers in the middle spot, so I wonder if it's going to be one of those that jumps, but it is also being used for boys. There are 3 boys named Skyler as well last year, so I really think it's a cool one. And we call Skyler Skies, which I really, really like. FYI, it's a little nickname choice. And the last one is a girl name. It's the name Sybil. I talk about the name Sybil often. I try to get on as many lists as possible because I love it, because it hits the vintage trend. It hits, it's got the beautiful L ending, which we absolutely love, and it means prophetess or oracle. So it's just such a beautiful name. All that symbols around the hands and the healing hands. Oh, I've got just thought of another name I could put on here. Is beautiful to me, very, very beautiful. And I think Sybil, with that name, I just think it's so lovely. I could so imagine my daughter being a Sybil, and I just think it should come back. So thinking about dark academia places from literature, Bran is a really interesting one. So you're probably familiar, I don't know if you are familiar with the name Bran. It has a lot of different meanings to it. So Bran in Scottish can mean like bramble or thicket, which I love, this sort of dark nature, which is my last category, but it also means in Celtic raven, and it was the ancient Celtic deity who was humongous, a gigantic deity. So he couldn't even live in a castle, he lived like outdoors, this amazing deity called Bran. It's also, if you look at Bran Castle, it is said to be where Dracula lived in Transylvania, not to be mistaken with Bram Stoker, who wrote it. So it's a really interesting name, Bran. There were only 5 boys named Bran last year, so it's not getting used too much, but I really, really like it. The name Victor, very much linked with Victor Frankenstein, and it's such a dark academia name. You see Victor come up a lot. It's because it's got that edge to it that Oliver doesn't. Oliver sounds very gentle, Victor sounds much stronger. So we see it mainly used for sort of darker characters, but I really, really love it. And I've known Little Book of Victor, and it was just such a standout name in a class full of Olivers. So it's a really interesting one. I talked about these 2 names in my Goth Glam, so do go back and watch that video if you're enjoying this one, but I wanted to share them again in case you missed it, which was Elsinore, which is Hamlet Castle, and I absolutely love it as a name. I've been crushing over it so much, like I'm going to mention it again, because Eleanor is so popular, and then Elsinore's just got this really extra special thing to it, because we've heard Ophelia, we've heard Cordelia, and all the Shakespeare names come through. So Shakespeare place names, and Elsinore works so well as a name, or Mandalay from Rebecca, the house of Mandalay. So I love them so much, I just wanted to mention them again. And my last section is dark nature names, which I feel really work in this dark academia, because it's a real setting that's so evocative of a place, and I can always take you to a place. So winter is a pretty obvious one, but if you're having a baby this time of year, would you go with winter? I really wanted to. I have a Christmas baby, but my sister already has a daughter called Summer, so it was a bit too themey, but I love the name Winter. There were 169 girls named Winter last year, and actually just 16 boys, which is funny because I knew 2 boys named Winter and no girls, so it's a really good one, great one for boys, and it's really evocative of a time of year when we experience so much, because it's love and joy and that sort of family time, but it's also the coldness and a bit of the isolation, and a time of reflection, I think, very much the winter. So it's a really gorgeous name. There's also the character Henry Winter in The Secret History by Donna Tartt, which is one of the #1 poster books for dark academia. I've never read it. I'm going to start it. I can't believe it. But I'm really excited that there's something I haven't read, so I'm going to go ahead and read that one. But Henry Winter is a character in that book as well. That's a book that you've absolutely loved and has got you into this aesthetic. I also love the name Solstice. So Solstice, there's a winter solstice and a summer solstice, and summer solstice is often a setting of dark things and rituals, and the winter solstice goes forgotten a little bit more, but it's on the 22nd, it's on my daughter's birthday, and it means when the sun stands still, and I just think it is beautiful and such a magical name, and a lot of dark academia is around magic, or these sort of secret societies and these changes that happen around the solstice when it's the darkest, shortest day of the year or the longest day of the year. So a really interesting name that really would match this sort of scholarly vibe. So for again dark nature, how about the name Morgana, which means circling sea? So that kind of stormy sea is the setting for so many dark academia novels and films, and it's just so perfect. This kind of deep dark, especially British, you know, out on the moors and the circling crazy sea is really, really beautiful. And Morgana is a really interesting name. There were just 9 babies called Morgana last year. It's a difficult one, but we think about Morgan, we really like it, and we love names that end in an A. So Morgana, it can become really pretty. It's just a tiny bit jarring with that G a little bit. Maybe it's not as pretty, but this list isn't about pretty. This list is about strong, windy, wild child vibes, and I think that's what Morgana is giving us. The name Bronte, ding ding ding, tick tick tick, Emily Bronte, and all the novels, and then it means thunder, which is this sort of weather, nature name, and it just sounds so beautiful. It's got the little unusual ending. It is like ticks so many boxes, Bronte. I didn't actually check how many people were called Bronte last year. Let me have a quick look. So there were 3 boys named Bronte and 32 girls named Bronte. So it's getting used. It's a really top tip, that one. Oh, here's my little solstice. Whee! Little rainbow girl. Nyx means night, and I think that's a really cool name, but you could also go with Nixie, which is a kind of playful, naughty water sprite, Nixie rather than Pixie, or just Nyx, meaning night, which really, really works. And my very last one is the name Ebony, which actually means a dark forest. Really, really beautiful name, very, very evocative again, and super duper wearable. And I know a lot of you really liked it because we talked about it a little while ago. So those are my dark academia names. What did you think of them, Evelina? If you have enjoyed this list, do like and do subscribe. As I said, next up is rom-com names. Whoop whoop. The total opposite, and they're really, really fun. They're quite cheese, but I think you'll enjoy it for Christmas. Funny, thanks. And I'll see you on my next video. Add more to the comment section below, and I'll see you soon. Bye, guys. I'm doing my moody dark academia thumbnail.